All right, I think I'll go ahead and begin introductions and welcomes. And as people trickle in, hopefully they'll be logged on shortly. My name is Sarah Lake. I am a part of the Community Engagement and Stakeholder Outreach team here at OPPD. I thank you all so much for being here in attendance today for our presentation about the Integrated Resource Plan. We have a very well-informed presentation today, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce our presenters. We have Colton Kennedy. He's our Manager of Corporate Planning. You might recognize him from the many decarb workshops that we've done over the past year, as he's been our great host with our vendor partners at E3. We also have Will Pickle, our resource planner here at OPPD, who will be talking much about the IRP during this presentation. Also joining us is Paul Fortney. He's our manager of product management. You'll hear from him later in the presentation. We are very thankful that our president and CEO, Javier Fernandez, will be joining us as well for this presentation. So thank you for everyone that's joined. In addition to our folks who will be presenting, we also have a slew of subject matter experts here on the line as well, as we'll be here to answer all of your questions and comments throughout this presentation. As we do here at OPPD, as we kick off every meeting, we do like to begin with a safety briefing. And it is so cold outside today. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to be outside, but ice is there. You can easily slip, trip, or lose your footing, and you could fall down suddenly, and it could result in something that is not quite comfortable. So please be careful. All of the spills, ice, snow, rain, loose mats, rugs, step ladders are all some of the common causes of slip, trips, and falls. So especially as we're running into some warmer weather over the next couple of days, thank goodness, we'll have some ice melt and some refreeze. So as you're out there walking your dogs or on your afternoon run, please be sure to check for icy spotches on the sidewalk or driveways or parking lots. Moving on to our opening statement, this will look very familiar to many of you who have been here for our Pathways of Decarbonization workshops. I just wanted to send a quick reminder to OPPD staff to mute your microphones when you're not speaking, and please silence all electronics devices. This meeting is recorded, so that way if you have friends, family, colleagues who would like to see the presentation and were not able to join us today, we will have it posted on OPPD Community Connect after the presentation, and this will be recorded for you to come back as well if you do have to step away for a bit. Come back to OPPD Community Connect, and we will have this posted as soon as it's available. Public attendees on Webex are in listen-only mode. But please know we do want to hear from you, and there will be plenty of times throughout this presentation where we will be able to hear from you. When prompted, you will see poll everywhere questions, and if you've joined us for any of our past Pathways Decarbonization workshops, these will be very familiar with you. I'll give you instructions on how you can check in, and you could do that either on your mobile device or on your computer. And there will be opportunities for you to take part in our polls and also answer some questions that we have. There's lots of opportunities throughout this presentation where we are seeking your comments. Also throughout this presentation, you will notice that we have the Webex Q&A available, and that will be available for you throughout to ask clarifying questions. Like I said, there is a slew of subject matter experts and a lot of my team also on board that we will be monitoring those questions, and we will get back to you just as soon as possible when you do ask those questions. And then finally, at the end of the presentation, we want to allow plenty of time to have you be able to ask questions to us. And you can do that through the hand raise tool. We'll give instructions specifically how to do that, but you could indicate that you're here and you have a question by raising your hand. Kim, our meeting host, will take you off mute, and then you could vocalize your question to us, so that way we can respond. And with that, I think we'd like to get started with our first question. If we were all in a room, as we wish we could be in person, but unfortunately, we are not able to be in person. We would know who's all in the room. So we want to do a little bit of introductory questions and kind of have a feeling of who's all here. So first of all, as I said, in 2021, we hosted a series of public workshops on our Pathways to Decarbonization project. We want to know if you attended any of those prior events, or we also created a project summary video that summarizes all of the workshops we had last year. I'll activate the poll here in just a moment, and you can text OPPD1 to 22333 to join, or you could go on your internet, on your computer, and go to pollev.com/OPPD1. So give me one moment to get it posted here. And here we go. If you can, again, go to pollev.com/OPPD1, text OPPD1 to 22333 to join, and then let us know A, B, C, or D. It might be an and D. You might have attended all of our events and watched the summary video, and you could actually vote for 2 since the summary video is kind of a separate question. So we have just a few people that this might be their first meeting that has not attended any prior events. So thank you very much for joining us. We have a good amount of people that have attended a couple of those previous events that we had last year for the decarbonization project. And then we even have, look at that, Colton Will, we've got 30% of the folks that attended all of our events, and then they're back again for the IRP. So thank you so much. And that summary video, I hope you've all found that useful. We did update it just in the past few weeks. So it includes all of the workshops from workshop 1 all the way up through workshop 6. It's about 42 minutes long, so it is a bit long, but it's covering over 12 hours worth of workshops. So you can understand why 42 minutes is a nice summary from those 12 hours. So thank you so much for participating in this poll. And thank you so much for everyone who's either coming to their first time today or has joined us all along. Our next question is, again, if we were in the room, we would see everyone who is in the room. And this is actually feedback that we received from one of the other workshops. They wanted to know who's all here. And the way Webex works is, unfortunately, we can't see all the other attendees. So if you would take a moment and introduce yourself, if you're here representing yourself, or if you're here representing someone else, or an organization, I should say, please let us know what's your name and who you're representing, whether it's yourself, if you're a customer, or perhaps it's an organization. Oh, looks like we have our board members here. Thank you, Director Williams, for being here. Phil, Don, Ben, thank you all for being here. And Ernie. David Holtzclaw, welcome. We'll give this a moment to let folks introduce themselves, and just want to make sure you guys all know who else is in the room, as we have a really good variety of people that are here. And again, a lot of names that we recognize from being here. We have Master of the Universe. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. I'll give this another moment. There is a little bit of a delay, so you guys all might be typing at once, and if you don't see your name pop up here, and this has to do with the comments too, please know that as soon as you let us know your name or your comment, we will have all these recorded. We read all these comments, we take them very seriously, and they will all be incorporated, as to what we would submit for the final. We do read everything. So please know that if you don't see it on the screen, it's because it's just taking a minute to go through all the different comments that we've gotten. So with that, I will thank you all for being here and for introducing yourselves. I do want to move along so that way we can get to the presentation and have as much time as possible to get all these great comments. So with that, I am going to flip it over to our presentation and turn it over to you, Colton.
Thank you, Sarah. Very pleased with the number of individuals who've been able to join us before, and definitely recognize a lot of the names on the list. So thank you all for joining today. Today, we're going to present OPPD's 2021 Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. So Before we start, I want to provide a little bit of an overview of what's contained in the IRP and what it is. So the IRP was published, or Integrated Resource Plan was published on January 21st of 2022, so a few weeks ago. We're now in the middle of a public comment period. So we're going to share highlights today, what's contained in the IRP, accept comments and facilitate feedback throughout today's session. And then ultimately, we're going to file the IRP with the Western Area Power Administration, or WAPA, at the end of February. The IRP that we're sharing today is principally composed of two areas. One is a focus on the next 5 years, where we have specific detail on plans, and then a second element which focuses on the long-term horizon, heavily influenced by the work that we've done as part of our Pathways to Decarbonization project. And so in the near-term horizon, in the next 5 years, we're going to share aspects of the plan that enhance OPPD's reliability and resiliency, that reduce carbon emissions, and also incorporate new renewable resources. In the long-term horizon, what you're going to see is you're going to find those pathways that allow OPPD to achieve net zero carbon by 2050 under a range of different scenarios. You're going to see high level the analysis that we did to understand the changing role of electricity across the economy and within our service territory as we look to the future. And then you're also going to hear about the robust reliability modeling that was incorporated throughout all of our analysis, and particularly as we're building these future portfolios that incorporate significant quantities of renewables. So we're going to focus on those elements, especially the reliability aspect, as we go through today's presentation. And before I turn it over to Will Pickle, a resource planner in our System Transformation Business Unit, I'd like to hand it over to our President and CEO, Javier Fernandez.
Thank you, Colton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to thank all the 70 plus attendees we have, and everyone here at OPPD attending. This is one milestone that represents a lot of work that has happened in the past, I would say 18 months at the very least. Resource planning is a function that we have at OPPD, and it's a function that happens that we use all the time. The Integrated Resource Plan is a document that is a work product of the functions of resource planning, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands that resource planning never sleeps. It's something that we are continuously doing at OPPD. More importantly, I would say in the last few years, the importance of traditional resource planning as it pertains to generation has been enhanced by all the work that we do on transmission and distribution planning as well. This is a really important part of what OPPD does. This is one of the things that we have today represented in our organizational structure. We have our Systems Transformation Business Unit that is really orchestrating all the planning efforts that resource planners, transmission planners, distribution planners, and alternative energy management are doing on behalf of OPPD. So I am really excited to present to you this plan, and of course Will is going to go in a lot of detail here. Something that is really important for me to share with our stakeholders, with the public that is watching today, is that we take a lot of care in planning a system that is reliable, that is resilient, and that it continues to take advantage of new technologies to continue to meet the growing demand of our customer owners. I am incredibly proud to say here today that all of the scenarios that were included in this resource plan that you're about to hear have a resource adequacy, which is a very important measure of reliability and resilience for us. Resource adequacy that is equal or better than OPPD's system has today. So we are maintaining or improving the resource adequacy that we have in OPPD system today, and that is not an easy thing to do. So I want to make sure that everybody understands everything that's presented here on the Integrated Resource Plan is improving upon, is at least maintaining or improving upon the resource adequacy that we have in our system. And without further ado, I'm going to pass this back to Will Pickle to share with us all the details about the Integrated Resource Plan.
Thank you, Javier. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about today's agenda. So today we're going to be discussing the IRP background. What is an IRP? Why OPPD creates it? We'll take a high-level walkthrough of the pathways approach and process. This is the study development to include the reliability requirements and costs. We'll also talk about the pathways to key findings and the results from that work. Discuss the OPPD plan that's both the near and the long term. Then we will open the floor to comments during our open comment period with a team of subject matter experts to answer your questions. And then we'll round out our engagement by discussing the next steps for the IRP. And we will go ahead and transition here to another question from Sarah.
Yeah, so the IRP was released on January 21st. So like Colton said, we're right in the middle of our comment period. We've been taking comments as soon as we released it, we started to take comments, and we'll take them all the way up through February 20th. But now is very important to have this presentation with you all. We would like to just kind of take a baseline here of find out how many of you have actually read the IRP. So since it's been out, let me get back to that poll everywhere. Give me one moment to change the slide. And just let us know, have you read the entire document? And it is quite a long document. How many pages is it, Will? 120 something pages plus 180 something pages appendix. So yeah, we're just curious if anyone has had a chance to read the entire document quite yet. We're being realistic. If you've even read a part of it, that's great. If you have not read it yet, that's fine too. We just kind of wanted to let you to kind of have a feel of the room as to how familiar you guys are so far with the document at this point. So does that surprise you, Will, seeing that, gosh, about, almost everyone, about half of the people have read at least part of it, or some have actually read the entire thing, and another 42% have not read it yet.
It's exciting to see so many stakeholders interested in reading and getting involved in this process.
So with that, especially since we have such a good amount of people right now that have read either the entire thing or part of it, or even if you have not read it yet, you still might have something that is of interest to you, and that's why you're here today. So just to sort of gauge that interest, we're just wondering what might interest you in the 2021 IRP, whether you've read it or not, and we'll give you a moment to gather your thoughts here. But this would just be a nice, some nice information for us to learn about what might be most important or interesting to you in the integrated resource plan. Or maybe it was even the appendix. I mean, that appendix was the final draft report of our Pathways Decarbonization study with E3. So I know that we've had comments about that already.
And if you have not had a chance to read the document, you can find that at oppdcommunityconnect.com, where there's also the summary videos and things available as well.
Yeah, thanks. Well, that's a good point. And that's on the same page where you probably found registration information for this webinar. So should be easy for you to find. But we're getting lots of good comments here. We're talking about a lot of net zero. I think I might have seen something about the reliability, some carbon credits, lots of good feedback. Storage and solar. Let this go for just a moment, and then we will get a little bit more into the presentation where Will and Colton will give you a little bit of the highlights of what's in there, and we'll have a few more opportunities here for additional comments. So thank you all for all of your feedback so far. Will, I think I'll turn it back over to you. And again, if you had a comment and it hasn't gotten up yet, please know that we will receive it. So thank you so much for participating.
And thank you, Sarah. So what is an IRP? Well, I'm glad that you asked. It's a planning process for new energy resources that evaluates the full range of alternatives, including new generating capacity, new power purchases, energy conservation, cogeneration, district heating and cooling applications, and renewable energy resources to provide adequate and reliable services to electric customers. OPPD's mission is to provide affordable, reliable, and environmentally sensitive energy services to our customers. OPPD's planning process is guided by our strategic directives, such as Sd4 rates. In order to support the rate target, OPPD uses low-cost optimization in the planning process. Sd4 Reliability. OPPD recognizes the value of reliability and ensures the planning process incorporates the requirements that the system will continue to operate at a high level of reliability service to our customer owners. And Sd7, environmental stewardship. It's about minimizing impacts on the environment. So the board of directors has set a decarbonization goal of net zero carbon production by 2050. A little bit more about the IRP. OPPD files an IRP with WAPA every 5 years as a result of a long-term contract to receive hydroelectric power. The requirements of these filings are documented in the regulation 10 CFR 905. As part of OPPD's planning process, OPPD complies with NERC and SPP reliability requirements. It is important also to note that the IRP is not a decision to add or retire assets. During the IRP planning process, OPPD takes into account key components, such as the creation of a load forecast, taking into account current and near-term future customer demands, the evaluation of supply and demand-side resources, both current and potential. OPPD also takes into account the electric system and how all of the components interact to ensure reliability and resiliency. An additional component to this process engagement is engagement and the participation of stakeholders. Gathering input and communication from our stakeholders is important. And I will be followed by Sarah. Talk a little bit more about that engagement journey.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Our stakeholder engagement journey planning process began back in 2020 as we were reviewing past IRP processes that we've had over the years. And in fact, we also spoke with many other utilities to find out more about their IRP processes, just to make sure that we were among the best practices with our IRP stakeholder engagement process. We also engaged with several stakeholders who expressed feedback about our 2016 process, and that helped us build our process for this 2021 outreach for the IRP. So we understood a lot of good feedback that we had from all this research was the need for a layered approach. So we worked with our vendor partner E3 to develop 6 workshops that we held last year, plus an interim modeling update. These workshops really provided a deeper dive for our most interested and engaged stakeholders. But we realized, gosh, like I even said before, that was 12, 14 hours worth of workshops. And we realized not everyone has the time to dig deep with us in those workshops or really wants to. In fact, they would rather just read an executive summary. So we created these executive summaries for those that weren't interested in doing the deep dive. Oh, and we also created the summary video as well for those who wanted to follow along with our journey, but maybe weren't as interested in attending every single one of the workshops. The workshops allowed our stakeholders to be part of this journey with multiple opportunities to participate. As you're noticing within this presentation, there was question and answer, hand raise opportunities, poll everywheres, and opportunities to just speak their mind during our open comment session. But even if you weren't involved in our actual workshops, there was opportunities for feedback on our community engagement platform, OPPD Community Connect, where we received about 70 plus comments on there about our pathways to decarbonization journey. And there was opportunities for stakeholders to ask questions of our subject matter experts, and we returned with answers. Our We do follow IAP2, the International Association of Public Participation, and our outreach levels varied from inform to consult. We were giving people information and they were also consulting with us along some parts of our journey. I wanted to take this moment really to thank you to all of our stakeholders who participated in everything from the discovery sessions, from the workshops, to everyone who logged on to OPPD Community Connect, asked us a question, provided their comments, or even that was just following us on social media and giving us some feedback along the journey. We really appreciate all the participation that we had so far, and it shows again today with a great group that's logged on today, and we hope that we receive a lot of great feedback as well. So thank you for joining us. With that, we have a question we wanted to ask, and this one is, OPPD must balance multiple objectives in our research planning process as part of our mission. We're just wanting to do an understanding check really with you to see if you can help us help us understand what are these objectives. So one moment as I go there. Again, OPPD must balance multiple objectives in our research planning process as part of our mission. What are these objectives? Affordability, reliability, environmental sensitivity, or all of them? Reliability is very important, so is environmental sensitivity, but as 90% of you know our mission, it's all of the above. Anything else to add, Will or Colton?
No, I think you have it, Sarah. I think, what we do in resource planning is we're balancing all of these within a structured and quantitative approach to get the most affordability, or the best affordability, the best reliability, and the best environmental sensitivity that we can. So it's good to see the level of responses for all of the above.
All right, I'm going to pass it back to you folks.
Thank you, Sarah. So as we mentioned earlier, the next 5 years, OPPD's reliability and resiliency needs are fully satisfied by our Power with Purpose projects. What I'm going to pivot into here is a further discussion of our Pathways to Decarbonization project, the approach and process. Next slide. And so I know that many folks here have followed us along through this entire process, but I'll give an overview of the project and a few key highlights as we move through today's content. So the Energy Portfolio Project studied actionable pathways to eliminate or significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions from OPPD's energy portfolio while balancing impacts on reliability, resiliency, and affordability. The study was intentionally broad. It was far-looking over a long-term horizon. And also, the intent of it was to provide directional information or directional results that help inform stakeholders and decision makers. But we always knew, starting this process, that because of its breadth, that there would be additional work that was going to be required for us to proceed down these pathways. So we were very clear as we went into the Energy Portfolio Project what the scope of the project was and what it was not. And so particularly within the scope of the Energy Portfolio Project, we developed a range of pathways to achieve net zero by 2050, a range that considered a variety of different technologies and also speeds of implementation, but all at the same time ensuring that we met reliability needs and minimizing the financial impact to ratepayers. We evaluated a number of different scenarios around different load profile, different scenarios for load growth or electrification, different assumptions for the availability of technology, carbon price, availability of flexible loads and energy efficiency. And so we built a report that developed, that focused on the commonalities of successful portfolios. But what the study is not, is it was not a recommendation of a single future energy portfolio or pathway. And so we developed this range, but we never intended to identify that singular pathway that OPPD would pursue. Likewise, it wasn't a decision to add or retire specific resources, or more specifically, it was never intended to be a siting study to determine where new assets would be located on OPPD's system. And as engineers conducting the study, we know that there's additional work that needs to be done around particular aspects, detailed transmission analysis in particular around that specific location of resources to ensure that specific decisions support overall system reliability. And so while the system covered broad concepts and a large, vast array of futures, there was additional work on specific topics that we'll talk about later as next steps for the project. And so as we began the Pathways to Decarbonization work, we identified the need to bring on an external consultant that has experience modeling systems with high renewable penetrations, but also a partner that would be able to help support robust, objective, and quantitative reliability and resource adequacy analyses. And so OPPD interviewed a wide range of different potential vendors and hired E3, Energy and Environmental Economics, to help support staff throughout the analysis. The analysis considered traditional resource planning elements like load forecasting, technology forecasting, scenario analysis, and least cost optimization. In addition, though, it also included advanced areas around multi-sectoral analysis and reliability and resiliency studies. That multi-sector analysis is incredibly important for OPPD to understand the future role of electricity within our economy and the impacts that has to OPPD's load growth over time. And our reliability and resiliency analysis focused on in-depth, detailed, quantitative resource adequacy modeling to ensure that we always have sufficient resources to meet our load, no matter what the conditions that we're experiencing on the grid. The team divided the work into a series of analytical tasks, and so we built a stakeholder engagement framework around these tasks, but they included multi-sector modeling, reliability and resiliency analysis, portfolio optimization, risk analysis, and then our final reporting and findings. And so throughout all of this work, we had a series of initially we started with 6, and then we added 1, so it was 7 2-hour workshops where we were able to engage with stakeholders, present our assumptions and also the processes and analytical approaches that we were taking, and hear feedback as we went along through the process. And so there's a vast wealth of information around all of the specific aspects of these 5 analytical tasks that's available on oppdcommunityconnect.com, both in the workshop format and in technical data releases and summaries. So in specific aspects of this, if you're interested in, what did you assume for technology X, the cost of technology X versus Y, or what happens if one technology becomes available or doesn't become available, or how did we conduct that reliability modeling, I would definitely encourage individuals to take a look, go to OPPD Community Connect and take a look at the particular workshop where we spent at least a 2-hour session going over those topics. And so there's a few areas that I want to particularly focus on where we've received a number of stakeholder questions. And the first of those is reliability and resiliency. And so reliability and resiliency is a requirement of all of our planning, but it's the foundation of all the pathways results that we have. OPPD views reliability and resiliency as a key enabler of decarbonization, and really took quite a bit of focus as we went through the study. And so this is a topic that, as a utility, we're very familiar with and have been planning for a number of years. OPPD is required to meet both regional and federal reliability requirements. So this isn't something that's new to us. These are studies and processes that are well known, well understood, and conducted across the industry. Our Pathways to Decarbonization modeling uses an objective and quantitative approach to ensuring reliability. We know that variable energy resources vary in output. We expect them to vary in output. We understand that limited duration storage has its limitations. We also understand that thermal and conventional resources have unexpected issues. They have unexpected maintenance issues. They have conditions that bring them offline with forced outages. And we also understand that weather volatility can pose a number of new conditions to us as grid operators. And so we need to plan for those in a rigorous way so that we always have a reliable and robust supply of resources. And so integral to the analysis that we conducted is a robust process to be able to evaluate a wide range of conditions, evaluating a range of different load conditions and weather conditions and output of renewables. We looked at over 40 years of actual empirical data on weather patterns. And we also stressed those with resiliency conditions, considering how, even more extreme conditions than those, even more extreme heat and cold, to understand how the different pathways that we're presenting would perform across those conditions. And so we're using loss of load analysis tools that include stochastic Monte Carlo simulations, thousands of iterations. We're able to capture the synergistic benefits of combining different resources. And so that's really something that's very key to this analysis, is that we understand that there's no perfect resource, and that to maximize reliability and resiliency most efficiently, it takes a combination of resources, each having different strengths and weaknesses. And so all of that was rigorously captured, and there's a workshop that was just dedicated to that. So if you're worried about, will this pathway work if the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow, I assure you it will, because we've simulated it under a large number of historical years to ensure that there's not only enough capacity, but there's a reserve margin of additional capacity to be able to provide that reliable and resilient future. Next slide. The second area we wanted to address, based on stakeholder comments and questions, was the cost of decarbonization. And so we conducted an intent study. What we found is that based on current available information, we estimate the cost of decarbonization to be about 0.3% to 0.6% per year relative to a reference case without decarbonization. And so by the time we get to 2050, that's approximately a range of 8 to 22%, at that point in 2050. For comparison, however, the Federal Reserve has a target rate of 2% annual inflation. So when we look at the annual increase of 0.3 to 0.6%, even relative to inflation, it is quite small. We recognize that it's a real cost and that some ratepayers are challenged, but relative to inflation and other costs and the size of the transformation, it is relatively small. Saying that, there are a number of different factors that are going to influence the cost of decarbonization between now and 2050. And so the timing and magnitude are dependent on many factors. They won't be linear. They're going to be dependent on the pace of decarbonization. They're going to be dependent on specific actions. They're going to be dependent on environmental regulations and requirements that we have. They're going to be dependent on technology development, the availability of technology, and the declines in costs of different technologies. And so while we took middle of the road estimates for technology costs and availability of technologies, the cost could be higher or they could be lower. And so our estimate of 0.3 to 0.6% covers the range of what we expect costs to be on an annual basis until we get to 2050. The other thing to note is that this cost impact is just in isolation, it's OPPD's energy portfolio. And so there will be other factors that continue to impact OPPD's rates and affordability outside of just our energy portfolio. And so this is a subset of OPPD's total costs, but the 0.3 to 0.6%, again, we found to be relatively affordable considering the size of transformation. There were other scenarios that the team evaluated, absolute zero versus net zero. that required significantly higher investments in renewable resources that didn't allow firm resources or dispatchable resources, like combustion turbines with backup fuel. And those costs, or those particular portfolios, ended up requiring so many more resources, so much more land utilization, so much more cost, that they were much higher costs, or had much worse economics than the net zero cases. So a number of learnings here around the best way to pursue decarbonization and the most effective way to pursue decarbonization. Okay. Those are a couple of areas that I know we've received a lot of stakeholder comment, so I really wanted to dive in to. I'm going to go over the high-level findings that we had resulting from the study. The first is that Oppd can achieve net zero while balancing for reliability. So we found net zero is achievable with projected generation and transmission cost impacts of approximately 8 to 22%, or 0.3 to 0.6% per year over time by 2050, while maintaining resource adequacy and reliability. Second is we found that across all the scenarios, there's a requirement to cease coal generation and reduce use of fossil fuels to efficiently achieve decarbonization economically. And so while there were technologies available like carbon capture and sequestration for coal, ultimately all the portfolios ceased coal generation. Generation from fossil resources was reduced in all net zero scenarios as it's increasingly displaced by low carbon resources. All the scenarios ultimately repower or retire Oppd's coal generation by 2045, and they maintain firm resources with minimum capacity factors. So while we're reducing the use of those, there's still a need for those in those critical periods, according to that reliability and resource adequacy analysis I shared previously. The third is that the pathways require a mix of renewable energy, energy storage, and community-wide energy efficiency. So large quantities of low carbon resources are required to displace fossil generation and reduce emissions across Oppd's system. As we reduce utilization of fossil sources, we're going to need to increase the production from low carbon resources such as renewables. Next. So this came straight from the reliability and resource adequacy analysis that we conducted. We realized that firm generation is needed to maintain resource adequacy. And so wind, solar, and energy storage, and demand-side resources, they all support reliability, they all contribute to reliability, but they have limitations, especially during extreme weather events. And so during those extreme events, firm resources are required to support system reliability and resiliency. And these are firm dispatchable resources. So these are resources that can be turned on, that have fuel available, and fuel security to be able to provide, even in the harshest of conditions. Next. We found that the resources that are required to achieve decarbonization are consistent across a wide variety of pathways. And so there's a core set of resources that are common across all the different scenarios that we evaluated. And that combination of new resources, it accelerates or decelerates according to Oppd's pace of decarbonization, and it scales according to Oppd's load. So it's relatively the same mix and type of resources, and if Oppd experiences higher electrification and higher loads, it's more of all of those types of resources. If we have lower loads, then it's proportionally less of all of those types of resources. I mentioned previously, as we talked about costs, and that's achieving absolute zero is more costly, and it's also dependent on future technology development. We evaluated net zero and we evaluated absolute zero, and we found that absolute zero is more costly. It requires impractically high levels of renewables at significantly higher total cost to ratepayers. However, as emerging technologies such as hydrogen or long duration storage become available, that target may become more achievable. And even technologies like small modular reactors, nuclear, have the ability to help us achieve absolute zero, as we see cost decline and commercial availability of those technologies. Next. We found that accelerating decarbonization reduces OPB's cumulative emissions at a relatively low incremental cost, but poses implementation and integration challenges. So as we accelerate these sets of decisions, we can reduce our total emissions output over time, but the challenges of accelerating the decisions are we're adding more resources within a shorter time period. And so there are real challenges with supply chain and financial challenges and interconnecting all of those new resources onto the grid. And there's also operational risks going through such a fast transition. So all of these need to be balanced accordingly as we move forward towards the goal of net zero. Lastly, we understand that the grid, that there's a changing resource mix, and that poses new reliability and resiliency challenges that must be evaluated, understood, and mitigated. And so as these challenges become more apparent, we'll be able to understand and plan for them. We also understand that critical resiliency periods for the system today are going to change in the future. So today, we look at peak summer conditions, and also as we move forward, the system may be most challenged during extreme cold or periods of low renewable generation. And so we need to understand and be prepared to address those conditions. Okay, those are the key findings that we had from the Pathways to Decarbonization project.
Thank you, Colton. He just went over a lot of information, and I know a lot of it is probably not new, especially for those of you who had joined us along our Pathways to Decarbonization journey so far. So we'd love to know what are your thoughts on these key findings. So let me go ahead and make that poll live and give you a moment to gather your thoughts and message them over to us. Again, respond at pollev.com/OPPD1 or text OPPD1 to 22333. And just let us know, what are your thoughts on these key findings? If this is something you just heard now, if you've heard about them, our workshop 6, and have had some time to let them digest a bit, we are glad someone's looking forward to the future, as are we. Love to know additional thoughts that you have. So we have some more thoughts on rates, some thoughts on moving faster. Again, net zero by 2035 looks very achievable. Gotten that feedback from stakeholders a bit throughout this process. And again, thank you for your feedback throughout this process. Someone nuclear, go nuclear now, meet your goal by 2040. Thank you for the comments. Keep on bringing them in. Colton, Will, you had any surprises here? Any thoughts on what we're seeing for folks?
I appreciate seeing all these comments. I think we'll have some time for some comments and discussion verbally later, but yeah, just really enjoy seeing all these come in.
Yeah, that's a good point and a good reminder, Colton, that we've wanted to provide a lot of opportunities for everyone throughout this presentation to be able to text in or type in their thoughts throughout these poll everywheres. But yeah, we do want to hear from you. We want to have a little bit of that dialogue. And so there will be time at the end that will encourage, those hand raises and encourage you to have that dialogue with us. And of course, also, we'll be continuing to take this feedback through February 20th on OPBD Community Connect. If you go to oppdcommunityconnect.com/IRP, there's a place where you could just leave a comment for us, or there is a place where you could ask us a question. And if you ask us a question on that platform, we will get with our subject matter experts and return your question with an answer within 3 business days. So please know that is available for this project through February 20th. So
there are a couple of things, Sarah, here that I think I can address just to make sure we have clarity of the presentation. One of those, let's see, it's scrolled too far. One of them was around our cost estimates, and so we used the best available information for the costs of different technologies that went into the analysis. So although it could be higher or lower, we feel like it's the best estimates and the best information on the cost impacts that are available today. And I think, let's see.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those. I'm trying to scroll up and down to show you them, but go back up to the beginning. Is there something else you wanted me to hunt for?
Well, I think there's some questions around technology availability. And so when we look at the different pathways, there's certain resources that come before others, and there's certain expectations for when certain technologies will be available to us. So I think that there's some questions around the technology maturity, and I think that that was considered if you look in the details of the analysis as well. There's another one, but I don't quite see it. So I think we can keep on moving, Sarah, and we can address it if it comes up again.
Yes, and please know that we'd love to hear your voice at the end, and we can have those discussions as well. And Colton, if you think of something, you could always pipe in. So, all right, I'm going to turn it back over to our PowerPoint. Oops. Here we go.
Thank you, Sarah. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and discuss the OPB plan, both the near term and the long term. We'll go to the next slide. OPPD ensures reliability. We do this by maintaining resource capability, exceeding its system peak, and on top of that, it's an additional planning reserve margin of 12%. While the Pathways to Decarbonization Energy Portfolio Study analyzed many pathways into the future, including a spectrum of decarbonized sectors outside of the electric utility, the 5-year time horizon or reference load aligns with the expectations of our expectations of energy demand. Factored into the reference load is energy efficiencies already inherent in the marketplace, as well as the OPPD, EE, and DR programs and their projected growth. This load forecast also takes into account distributed generation and the impact of expanding customer use of electric vehicles within our service territory. As we look at OPB's 5-year load and capability report, OPPD has firm dispatchable and variable energy resources in our current portfolio. There is also near-term additions from the Power with Purpose project, including additional solar and natural gas balancing stations being added. These resources provide affordable, reliable, and environmentally friendly energy services to our customers. No additional resources beyond the Power with Purpose assets are needed to meet near-term load and reliability obligations. These resources also provide additional reliability to the system. Over the next 5 years, OPPD will continue to implement its Power with Purpose project. This project is an important step in supporting emergent load growth and provides additional system capacity and on-peak energy. OPPD previously updated WAPA with these plans in its 2020 and 2021 annual IRP updates. OPPD's Power with Purpose plans reduce emissions. This also continues the focus on reliability, all while incorporating higher levels of renewable resources, including 400 to 600 megawatts of utility scale solar and adding Turtle Creek and Standing Bear Lake stations for natural gas capacity and reliability. OPPD is actively executing these plans and is working to overcome numerous implementation challenges caused by the current market environment. OPPD will also retire North Omaha stations units 1, 2, and 3, and repower units 4 and 5 from coal to natural gas.
IRP includes a snapshot of our current short-term demand-side management product roadmap. It's subject to change as customer needs shift, as OPPD's goals, core competencies, and available technologies change. OPPD continuously invests in identifying, developing energy efficiency and demand response programs as an effective means of lowering customer costs and demands on OPPD's system. Customers and communities play an essential role in enabling future levels of energy efficiency, demand response, and lower carbon emissions as we push for that goal of net zero. Continued work through our product development and marketing team, including ongoing work associated with the Pathways to Decarbonization customer work stream, will continue to look for the best products and solutions. This includes OPPD engaging with customers on new solutions and how to enhance existing products and services so that we can improve energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The roadmap includes products to assist both residential and commercial customers. It features products to incent customers to more frequently tune up their HVAC systems, incentivize the installation of solar, upgrading to more energy efficient appliances, adding better lighting, including installation of lighting controls, continued expansion of smart thermostat program, rebates for home weatherization, including upgrades like more efficient doors, windows, and insulation, and the installation of heat pump water heaters. For commercial customers, we want to incent the installation of building management systems, upgrading efficiency of outdoor lighting, expanding OPPD's current Eco 247 offerings, and create rebates for the purchase of energy efficient commercial food service appliances and equipment. And with that, I think we're going to go to Sarah for another poll.
Thank you, Paul. Yep. We are going to another poll. We'd like to know of OPPD's roadmap, which product or program would you like to see OPPD offer or grow? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that and let us know which product or program would you like OPPD or would you like to see OPPD offer or grow? Again, Paul just gave you the roadmap. If you could please respond at pollev.com/OPPD1, or again, text OPPD1 to 22333. But I think by now you guys are pros with that since we've had quite a few of these. So support solar for homes and businesses. That's certainly a theme that we saw. Again, solar. Rebates. And Paul, are you surprised with seeing some of this responses we're getting so far? Or?
No, I think a lot of them are things that we currently do or things that we're planning, like I said, on the roadmap. Things like smart meters are something that OPPD is planning for the future. Certainly helps us change the product mix that we can offer in terms of what we can do with that real-time data or near real-time data. Solar incentives, that's something we're actually rolling out a pilot next month, I believe, with some residential solar rebates. Weatherization, another good one on the roadmap.
Thank you. You have to keep on coming in.
Another area that we have some things in the work for as well.
This is a really good feedback, and really, again, I appreciate everyone participating and letting us know your thoughts.
I was going to say, on-bill financing was another one that's listed, and that's also something that we have slated to look at this year.
Well,
Again,
I'm going, oh, Paul, it looks
I
like
was
you're
gonna,
hard to hear.
I was just gonna say again, appreciate all the comments and the feedback, and continue to reach out to the customer base to get more input as we go along.
Well, very good. I'm going to, I think, turn it back. It looks like they might be slowing down, but again, we'll get your comments if after I've turned this off, if yours is kind of in queue. So appreciate the feedback. And again, they'll be here just in a couple slides. We're going to be turning on the hand raising option. So be anxious to hear from you then. And I think we're going back to you, Colton.
Thanks, Sarah. So Will and Paul shared the plan over the next 5 years. Looking forward, our direction is influenced by our Pathways to Decarbonization study. There were key findings there that pointed towards an increase in renewables, continued investment in energy efficiency and load flexibility, cessation of coal generation and reduced fossil usage, and also the continued role of firm generation to support resource adequacy. So as we move forward and we look towards the future, we anticipate incorporating all of these aspects into our goal, into our pathway for achieving net zero. What we found, particularly across the net zero scenarios, is that by 2030, this calls for 1,100 megawatts of solar, 500 megawatts of wind, and 150 megawatts of energy storage resources. By 2050, that number grows to approximately 3,000 megawatts of solar, 3,800 megawatts of wind, and 800 megawatts of energy storage. All of this, of course, is dependent on the emergence and availability of different technologies and cost forecasts. And so Oppd will continue to be updating its resource plan as we move forward, and to continue to reevaluate the best alternatives and best options for our ratepayers and our customers. There's one point here, Sarah, that I wanted to highlight, I think, just for clarity, with some of the comments that we saw scrolling across earlier. I think that there was one question about, are we waiting till 2045 for ceasing coal generation at our facilities? And I would just re-articulate that there is a range of different scenarios and pathways. And so across that range, reducing coal utilization and conversion happens in a variety of different years. So that 2045 is the upper date that we saw across all of the different scenarios to achieve decarbonization by 2050. But there's just a range there, and I wanted to clarify that point. Okay. Next slide, please. And so as we look forward, we know that there's key findings here that address the resources that are required. I also mentioned that the Pathways to Decarbonization study was broad and directional. It helps us understand the what of what the future looks like from a technology perspective and a resource perspective. But there's more specifics to bring the plan together of how specifically we're going to do that. And so there's two advanced feasibility studies that we're going to be launching in 2022 that are our next steps towards moving down that path. The first is an advanced supply side resource feasibility study. And this includes detailed analysis for transitioning our existing resources, and specifically our Nebraska City Station. So how can we transition from high emitting, high utilization coal today towards our goal of decarbonization, while also ensuring energy adequacy, energy assurance, and that we understand the full range of operational impacts as we, whether that's staffing or controls for the system as we move towards the future. The second point on the advanced supply side resource feasibility study is an in-depth look on the specific resources to pursue. And so what we did in the Pathways to Decarbonization study is we evaluated a number of standalone resource types of wind, solar, and storage. We understand that there may be benefits of combining those resources, combining them to increase the utilization of the transmission system and providing more predictable output at certain locations, and also the shared infrastructure of those facilities to reduce costs. And so there's more work to be done as we look towards those future resources and specific plans around future resources. The second feasibility study that we're talking about is the advanced demand side resource feasibility study. And so this includes distributed resource potential and planning, particularly as we we have the pathways to decarbonization work. It helps us understand a top-down perspective of the energy efficiency that's going to be required or can potentially be achieved to help us towards decarbonization. We need to understand the specific details, the specific products and programs, as Paul mentioned, and the program and product design that's going to help us along that goal. And so we need to understand those specifics. We also need to understand the availability of different distributed demand-side resources on our system. So as we look at load flexibility and as we look at electrification and greater electric vehicles and households, does that offer opportunities for load flexibility? And when does that become available to us, and what enables it? Also, on demand-side resources, we're talking about distributed energy resources like solar or battery storage. And so, as an example for solar, we have a high-level estimate on what we think the potentiality is, the feasible potential for adding solar on rooftops as part of an overall plan. But we also need to break that down into specific types of installations, whether that's commercial businesses or residences or large businesses. What's the opportunity across different sizes of installations, and how can that support our overall resource needs as we move forward towards the transition? The second part of our advanced demand-side resource feasibility study is a distribution system impacts study. And so this is studying the impacts to the lowest level of our electrical transmission distribution system. It's understanding that as we have greater electrification and as there's greater load at that lowest level, how is that going to impact the need for upgrading our system? And potentially, if we're looking at demand-side resources and load flexibility, are there opportunities to mitigate some of those impacts? Or encouraging electrification in the right way that minimizes potential need for upgrades, which could be quite expensive. So that's also wrapped up into this advanced demand-side resource study. Both of these are influenced by sort of learnings that we've had in the pathways work, and we anticipate the detailed scoping of them to occur in early 2022, and that'll inform our organizational resource requirements and the timelines of these studies, but to be launched and scoped in 2022. Okay, and the next slide. So we've talked very optimistically about the future and about our ability to move forward. Oppd isn't doing, doesn't have the capability to do this alone. It's dependent on many factors, and so as we look at implementing the strategy and moving down this pathway, or these pathways rather, there are implementation challenges. Geopolitics and global supply chain is one of those. And so as we look at the availability of resources, where they're being produced, how they're being produced, and the availability for us to add them onto our system, that's something that needs to continue to be monitored as we develop our sourcing strategy. The second is federal energy policy. And so there's continually evolving federal policy that impact renewable resources, that impact all resource types. And so, continuing to monitor federal policy and how that influences our direction. A third is the FERC regulated generator interconnection process. And so currently there are many more resources in renewable resources across the region that want to be connected to the system that are in this backlog study process, where planners need to understand what are the impacts of adding these resources, and then can give the go-ahead for them to be added. And so there's a backlog process, and we're waiting for resolution on how that can improve, but that challenge is implementation. Next, there's the local planning and zoning regulations, and these are important consideration for Oppd's ability to construct our resources within our service territory, around our service territory, as they're needed for our system. And lastly is customer preference. So as we talk about demand-side resources, customers are going to need to willingly adopt resources, energy efficiency or distributed resources, and so customer acceptance is important to the success of our overall approach and pathways here. Okay, I think that wraps up the content that we have on the IRP. And certainly, reading the document, there's hundreds of pages on the details of all of these bullet points and the study that we did. So, Sarah, I think it's back to you so that we can pivot to customer feedback.
Yeah, and before we open it up to those verbal comments, we just want to make sure that everyone has a chance here to let us know what stands out most about OPPD's plan. So let me get to that last poll everywhere question. And you probably still have it open on your phone or on your computer. Let us know what stands out to you most about OPPD's plan, either what you've heard today or what you read about the IRP online. Let us know at pollev.com/OPPD1, or again, text OPPD1 to 22333 if you haven't joined already yet, and let us know what stands out to you most about this plan. And as people are gathering their thoughts, just also remember that we will have the opportunity to vocalize your comments after this. Thank you for the much better plan and community engagement than the one 5 years ago. That's what we were hoping for. We got lack of nuclear, does not mention a price on carbon, thoughtful, detailed, specific, reasonable.
I have to respond to some of these, Sarah, as I see them.
Go for it, please do.
I can't help not. We evaluated sensitivity with a carbon price, so certainly information in the report on that. Nuclear is selected in some of the pathways that we have, and there are specific conditions that lead to us selecting nuclear, and we're optimistic that the technology will continue to advance, and this resource planning process is going to be something that is repetitive and we'll have new information that supports our decisions as we move forward. So it doesn't mean that nuclear is not part of the future. It just means that we'll see how it matures in the coming years, and for it to be potentially part of the portfolio in the future.
Well, thank you, Colton, for that. Since we're right up to our verbal comments, again, this will be in the background. So if you have additional thoughts, you can continue to text them to us. But I'm going to switch it over because it's 5:14 and we do want to allow time for folks to be able to verbalize their questions to us. So I'm going to switch it back to the presentation. And again, appreciate all of this feedback that we've gotten on the poll everywhere so far. Okay.
Okay, Sarah, as we go into the comment period, I just wanted to let folks know that we have a team of OPPD employees ready and waiting to answer stakeholder questions. There's myself, seen me in the pathways work. There's Ryan Stiggy, our program manager of decarbonization, Tim O'Brien, our director of economic development and external relations, Courtney Kennedy, our manager of alternative energy program, Scott Edom, director of our engineering services, Will Pickle, who presented today and is our resource planner within system transformation. We have Paul Fortney, who also presented, our manager of product management, Seth Boyles, our government relations manager, and there are a number of other individuals who are listening and ready to help respond to questions that may arise.
So thank you to all of you who are on board ready to answer some questions, and thank you to all you folks who have been along with us on our journey and are ready to ask questions. So now is the time to please raise your hand. I'm just going to read these directions. Step 1, you would need to click the participant icon and open up the attendee list. Scroll down to the bottom of the attendee list and click the hand raise button. And step 3, click the hand raise button to to lower your hand, and that's after we take you off mute. I do have some folks on my team that are on as well: Jamie Wagner, Kim Barnes, Jenny Raddick, Lori Zagurski. Thank you all for being here and helping us moderate these questions. Jamie and Kim will be able to look to see if we have any hand raises. Is there any telephone users? I don't know if anyone joined us just by telephone and not through WebEx Online, but if there are, we want to hear from you as well. So those telephone users should press *3, and that way we will notice that you have your hand raised and we'll identify you by your phone number to tell you that you're off mute. So with that, I know we've had so many comments, and I would imagine we have some folks with hand raises. Jamie, Kim, do we have anyone raising their hand yet?
Yep, we had one telephone user at the beginning, but I don't see it on here anymore. But we can go ahead and get over to Mr. Rini, have a hand raised. If we could unmute, please, Kim, that would be awesome.
I'm sorry, what is his first name, please?
Brian?
Thank you.
Sure thing. All right, there you go, Mr. Rini. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
I was just wondering if you guys have taken into account all the data centers that are being built around here, because I've been on a few of them already on the construction side of it, and I know the on-demand capacity is probably going to be in the realm of 60 to 80 megawatts per data center. And that's just the one I'm working on right now, and the company that is building that one is going to build 2 more right next to it, and they already have plans laid for another one in Northwest Omaha that's probably going to have at least 4 more of those data centers.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You know, as part of corporate planning, we also conduct Oppd's load forecasting. I can assure you that that kind of load can't be added to the system without thorough discussion with the electric utility. And so we have account executives that try to get the best available information on what that load is and the timing of its load. And for all economic development, that funnels into part of our load forecast going forward. So, you know, we've been in conversations. I think, you know, what you see in the load forecast is our best estimate of where our service territory is going from a load growth perspective. So, good comment, and I'd say we have it covered. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Rini. And just a reminder for everybody, after you raise your hand, you have to click it again to unraise it. That's whether you do it on the bottom of your computer or if you do *3 on your phone. Next in queue, we have Laverne Train. If we could unmute Mr. Train. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, sir.
That's okay. That's close enough. Your study leaves hydrogen out of the renewable energy box. It puts it into a box where it says it's not a mature technology, and it also puts it into a box where it comes to burning. And you guys are continually saying that you can't be 100% renewable. So let me just share this with you real quick. There's a study out of Stanford, the Jacobson-led study conducted with their colleagues, analyzed grid stability with multiple scenarios in which wind, water, solar energy resources powered 100% of all the energy needs for the United States. Hydrogen is important. Oh, you said it wasn't mature enough. Let me read this to you. With more than 3,500 reliable, cost-efficient electrolyzers installed around the globe since our founding in 1927, sustained R&D efforts have contributed to continual improvement of electrolyzer technology, setting the benchmark. And that's just one company, started in 1928. If you were born in 1928, I think you would be considered mature. Now, the reason this is important is there's currently 0.3 gigawatts of electrolyzers powered by renewable energy installed today, and our country will need about 40 gigawatts will be commissioned by 2030. And for us to be 100% renewable in the United States, we're going to need something like 500. I don't think I have it right here. And worth of hydrogen. Now, you're an energy company. You can sell more than electricity. And the way to pay this situation off with a hydrogen electrolyzer is, first of all, you take your excess energy that you produce with the wind and solar, and you put that in hydrogen. Of course, that won't be enough. Then you dedicate solar and wind directly to the hydrogen production. And then there's your stable energy source. Now you've no longer have to lower your price from day to night, because you could take that excess energy in the evening when it's over generating in the spring, and you can maintain your day rates instead of having to reduce your rates and have to with that fluctuation. Which I don't see anywhere where that's calculated in any of the scenarios where you can maintain your higher day rate all the way through for a 24-hour period, because you're putting that energy into hydrogen. And the Senate has authorized and appropriated $9.5 billion for clean hydrogen research, where you've got grants for batteries, but I see that you're not acquiring any of the billions of dollars that are coming down the pike for any kind of hydrogen research, mostly into hydrogen electrolyzers. You have it in the burning section because you have 2 natural gas generators that'll take 15% hydrogen as a drop-in fuel. Well, we don't burn hydrogen anymore. It's through electrolyzation, which is very similar to battery technology. So I'd like to know why, after all this research, none of this stuff has been put into any of your reports. None of the hydrogen business. You don't even have it in the renewable energy section. So I don't understand. It's the most abundant resource in the universe, and you've left it out. And so please explain why.
Absolutely. So I guess just for clarification, you know, i- hydrogen was included in everything in all the scenarios except the mature only scenario, because it's not commercially and readily available right now at the scale that's required with the storage capacity that's required to provide firm dispatchable generation, which is a key element for reliability and resiliency. So it's been incorporated. We incorporated green hydrogen. We incorporated the cost associated with producing green hydrogen. And I would think that there's a thorough, there was a thorough coverage of it, as well as in our technology exploration in the workshop that we had. So, I think the team did cover it, and I appreciate the comment. And if you can provide the study and the information, we're always open to reading it and continuing to monitor it as part of our plan. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laverne. I know we had a question come in about how to unmute. Kim, can you go ahead and take care of that one? Mr.
Hey,
Bagley?
yeah, this is Dave Bagley. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Go right ahead, sir.
Is Javier on the line here? The CEO?
Yes, sir. I am on the line.
Okay, Javier. I've looked at these numbers here, and I've looked at Mid-America Energy's. Well, first off, you've got a measly 1 megawatt in Cass County for $2.5 million. And lithium batteries are not utility scale. I was just told today you're going to have 800 megawatts of battery storage. That's $2 billion. You right now have 2.23 billion in debt. So let's just put that aside. Buffett and over at Mid-America Energy, I know this because the press release came out like January 19th or 17th. They're going to spend a little under $4 billion for a little over 2,000 megawatts of wind. Now, today I'm informed that you're going to do 3,800 megawatts of wind and 3,000 megawatts of solar. On page 123 of your IRP, I saw 5.6 gigawatts of wind and 4.7 gigawatts of solar. So today it's a lower number, but I figure at a minimum it's 23 billion with the wind and solar. If these lithium batteries magically are available, that's another 2 billion. So here's the thing, Javier, and you have got to know this. If this is going to cost at least $20 billion. The rate increase isn't going to be 0.3 or 0.6. It's going to be double or triple because you've only got $1 billion in revenue, and you've already got 2.3 billion in debt. So you're going to have to borrow $20 billion. That's how rates are going to double. You've got to square this. This is very disingenuous, and this is very misleading. So I'd like to hear your response.
Thank you, Mr. Begley. I appreciate it. And this is not new. You've been coming to our board meetings for the past few months, and you've been mentioning the same concept. And you know, as a customer owner, I appreciate your engagement. This is important. Affordability is very important for our board members, for all of our customer owners, and we pay close attention to all three parts of our mission: providing reliable, affordable, and environmentally sensitive energy service to our customer owners. I disagree with your numbers, but you know we're happy to engage, and we will provide more information. The information you shared, well, partially correct. It doesn't really account for the entire financial structure and how we set rates and how we recover revenue. So happy to engage. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to provide more information in the future about how the financial plan will place into the development of our resources. But I really appreciate your comment, and I've been listening, and we will be happy to share more information about how we come up with these numbers. I have a lot of confidence in the teams that are preparing these numbers, these financial models. We are professionals in doing this, and again, I appreciate the challenge. We will take it, and we will try to, again, in the spirit of transparency. I disagree. I don't think this is disingenuous. The fact that we have providing all of this information for months at a time, it really, I'm very proud of the transparency and the stakeholder process that we've gone into with customer owners. And again, I welcome the feedback, the perspective, and we will take that and try to address those topics here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier. Laverne, I think you might still need to raise your hand for me, if you wouldn't mind, sir. And then I think our next question came in again from Brian Rennie.
Yeah, so I'd actually like to commend Laverne on his research, because even though hydrogen is still somewhat an emerging technology, it is not as widely commercially available as it should be. We need to work on these innovative solutions in order to make those commercially available. Like, we can even use nuclear reactors to harvest hydrogen to use as fuel as well. Like, there's just so many things out there. The technology is available, but if we're waiting for it to become mainstream, we're going to be behind. China is already working on building 15 small modular reactors. They're going to be way ahead of us in the energy game if we don't start somewhere. And I think we need to start in the Midwest, where innovation thrives, and we need to start now.
Yeah, I wanted to comment that Oppd is part of a number of initiatives with EPRI studying emerging technologies. There's one effort, EPRI's low carbon research initiative that we're participating in. I'm not sure if Ryan Stiggy is available to provide some additional information, but Oppd is part of research groups that help explore these technologies, and so something that we continue to monitor as it's available. So I don't know, Ryan, if you have more to add on that.
No, yeah, thanks, Colton. I don't have a lot more to add to it, but we definitely are participating in some of these research initiatives, and the one with EPRI that we're in that Colton mentioned, it has more than just research. There's development, there's actual trials, and hydrogen is a big focus. There's also a focus on some alternative energy carriers other than hydrogen, such as biofuels. And it also spans more than just the electric utility. It's economy wide, similar to our Pathways to Decarbonization initiative, looking at buildings and transportation and industry. So a lot of effort there, and a lot of it's focused on how to ramp up some of these efforts and make them more commercially available and reduce costs. So we're definitely involved, and we're keeping our ear to the ground, as you'd say, and trying to capitalize on that and be part of the solution. So yeah, thanks, and appreciate the comments.
Ryan, EPRI is the Electric Power Research Institute, and it includes many utilities across the U.S. and North America.
Yeah, and actually this initiative that we're part of includes over 50 other utilities and companies, not just in America, but also internationally. So it's got a lot of momentum behind it.
Thank you both, Colton and Ryan. Wealth of information. Thank you for the question again, Mr. Rini. And I think next up we have Ian Addleton. If you could unmute, please, Kim. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. This is Ian. I'm here on behalf of the Sierra Club and Synapse Energy Economics. And I just have a quick question about the results that you presented in the IRP. One of the key findings was that you can achieve more dramatic cumulative emission reductions on the accelerated pathways for only a small incremental cost. And I'm wondering whether you'd be able to present the exact range of cumulative emission reductions. I only saw that listed as a key finding rather than as a chart or a data table. And I think it would be good to understand the exact trade-off between cumulative emission reductions and incremental costs, because that hits two of your three priorities regarding affordability and environmental sensitivities. So I'm just wondering why that didn't make it into a more I guess, specific chart where we can actually look at those trade-offs as opposed to just a key finding. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. With data transparency, I think we've tried to publish as much information as we could throughout. There may be things that we missed, so that's certainly a key takeaway, and perhaps some data that we can explore some more and have that available to all stakeholders. I think the one comment around the accelerated, just as the balance point, is it comes to the fact that it's the same resources that are required. It's just accelerating them. Helps with the low incremental cost. The real challenge is the implementation, and again, adding more resources within a shorter period of time. So I see Aaron Burdick hopped on with his video, so maybe you have a comment, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Colton. Hi, Ian. I just wanted to direct you in Chapter 6 of the E3 report that is an appendix to the IRP. We do have two figures that show the trajectories of greenhouse gas emissions for each scenario that we modeled, and then we've also calculated the cumulative GHG emissions between 2020 and 2050. So those are figures 129 and 130. So you can look those up in the report and find the information.
Awesome. Thank you, Colton and Aaron, for the assist. Thank you for the question, Ian. And we'll move on to Mr. Welsh.
Can you hear me?
Sure can. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. And it's a pleasure to have Javier on with us today. This is great. I don't know if he or someone else could answer my question. I'm just wondering, how will a price on carbon and dividend hurt OPPD customers? Because most people will get a higher dividend than higher energy bills, so it won't hurt most of us. A price on carbon will speed up and increase the development of new technologies that OPPD could use to get off of fossil fuels more quickly. A price on carbon will help reduce future federal regulations that OPPD will have problems meeting. So why do I perceive so much resistance inside OPPD to a price on carbon when it has so many benefits for OPPD and its customer owners?
So, Mr. Welsh, I think I can actually take that. Regarding our price of carbon, we had a scenario and a sensitivity that evaluated price of carbon. And relative to the reference, having a price of carbon, OPPD is already headed down the direction of net zero by 2050. And so having that federal, tax or price on carbon increases the cost to OPPD relative to the reference again, for us to achieve the same goal that we already have in mind. And so, those are costs that ultimately would need to be passed down to ratepayers regardless. I think what you bring up is really important. There's so many different ways that such a policy could be implemented that I think it's really hard to say what the net impact, benefit or cost would be to OPPD customers. So appreciate the comment there. I think the team did explore carbon pricing sensitivities, and there's so much detail there that it's really hard to provide a comment on the specific impacts to OPPD customers. So thank you.
Thank you again, Colton. Next up, we have Liz Veazey. Liz, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I guess I'm unmuted. Yeah, I was just going to say that I really appreciate this plan. I think it is much better. I was tried to be involved in the last IRP, and I think this was a much better process. I really appreciate board members and staff who really worked to make that happen. And, since we've heard a lot from people about nuclear and hydrogen, I just want to say that I really appreciate this plan does not include that. I'm not sure if folks are just not remembering, but OPPD, my understanding is OPPD does not have a nuclear plant now because it was extremely expensive. So I think it's really smart for us to, be very cautious about that. Power with purpose, my understanding is that, we're building gas and solar for, I think, around 1 gigawatt for around $1 billion is my rough estimate. But there are, nuclear plants like in Georgia, a plant little more than double that size, people are on the hook for paying $30 billion for. So I appreciate OPPD, and I think that it's really smart to have the focus on renewables and storage. And I think those are, the most cost effective and, better for customers. So just want to say that I appreciate that. And the focus on, I think I've in the past pushed for more, customer involvement around energy efficiency and solar and stuff. And so it's really great to see all those programs that you all are doing on that too. So thanks.
Thank you for the comment, Ms. Veazey. The team's really tried to make this accessible and transparent. And so hearing that feedback is nice to hear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective so much. I think we have, again, if you want to unraise your hand, you can go ahead and click in the bottom right-hand corner, just the way that you raised it. Our next up is Charles, is it Ostick?
Yes, it's Ostick.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
I have a concern with some of these people painting rosy pictures about nuclear power, and someone, Ms. Veazey mentioned it a moment ago, also about the Vodal plant down in Georgia. It's like nearly 3 times the budgeted amount, and the schedule is way over budget. Every new nuclear plant on the planet has had similar problems. The Chinese plants mentioned a moment ago, the Taishan plants, are suspected of having a design flaw because of the geniuses of electricity de France. And so they've got fuel rods that are possibly leaking over in China. Their other new plants have got the similar problems. The Flamanville project in central France has been done and redone several times because of the incompetence of the metallurgists at Le Creusot in France, some of their turbine parts. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission had to have an inspection of every single nuclear plant in the United States because some of them, had parts manufactured by this company in France. The Hinkley Point in England, they lost all their financial backers. Olkiluoto in Finland, they're already over budget and over schedule. All these happy dreams about nuclear power, they're fantasies. Small modular reactors are going nowhere. We don't have time for any of that. The global climate disruption is on us. These are pet projects sponsored by the people that are, that are in part responsible for the whole problems. No one's mentioned the coal or the coal equivalency, the carbon footprint of the uranium mining and manufacturing and milling and all of that, and the storage of the nuclear waste after the waste has been generated. This is a management task of thousands of years. We're not going to be around for that long. So, you know, I appreciate that somewhere in one of the workshops they said we're going to keep an eye on developing technologies as these nuclear fantasy projects are developed. You know, okay, that's just not going to happen in near enough time. And I appreciate that the strong focus of these workshops has been going on something that is proven, the solar and wind energies and the battery technologies. That seems a lot more possible for the way things are going. I don't have a question. I just had some comments to make about nuclear power. It's ridiculous. It ain't gonna get us there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Astick. Always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much. We'll go to Louis Lester, please. Go ahead, Mr. Lester, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. One of my first questions is all the future addition of renewables under the, because there was talk of how much it would cost OPPD in the whatever 20 billion or whatever, is all the future contracts for all that solar and wind going to be purchase power, or is any of it being assumed that OPPD is actually going to build it and own it itself?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Lester. You know, that's something that OPPD continues to evaluate as we understand evolving federal policy, as we understand, you know, interconnecting resources to the grid and timelines. So, you know, I would say that all of that's still, you know, very much uncertain. You know, the study identifies the direction, it identifies the need for the resources, and there's that specific planning that's still required to understand how they might come online. So, you know, appreciate the comment and the clarifying question. Unfortunately, I can't provide that clarity to you.
Well, as a follow-up to that, then, as part of your evaluation, were there any assumptions in the analysis on improvements by SPP or other utilities adjacent on improving their interconnections, so our ability to transfer power and get power during scenarios for harsh environments? And was any of that scheduling limitations on the resources and the lead times and restrictions on just how much OPPD can build, and was that included in the 2035? What was the assumptions? Was that assuming it would be contract out most of the, if we were to accelerate that?
Yeah, again, there's not clarity on whether it would be purchase power or OPPD, you know, owning the facilities. So I can't provide that. I can say on your question around transmission upgrades, you know, the team did extensive transmission analysis to understand our capability today for imports and exports, and also, you know, what set of upgrades may enhance that capability into the future. So it took a robust set of inputs. I really can't provide, you know, whether by 2035 we would need to go PPA or ownership at this point. Thank you.
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Lester, and we will move on to Mark Leskutov. Gosh, I'm butchering all these, I bet. You're unmuted, sir. Oh, Kim looks like he's muted again.
Hopefully I'm unmuted now.
You're good now. Go right ahead.
All right. The question is about the Standing Bear Lake plant that's being built now with reciprocating natural gas fuel. And I noticed in one of the charts that fuel oil is a backup. And it's the first time that I was aware that fuel oil might be burned in those plants. And I'd like some information, since that's near my home, about, I thought the natural gas was going to be a backup for solar, and now it appears that fuel oil is a backup to the natural gas. So can someone comment on that and give me some perspective on how much, how often fuel oil is going to be burned in that plant? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We're aligning internally on who has the best information to respond to that. So one moment on our side.
Colton, I can take the question.
Thank you.
So, sir, the Standing Bear Lake Station, which will consist of reciprocating engines, will have natural gas as the primary fuel. But to assist with the resiliency of that station and to allow it to truly satisfy the grid support needs, we did decide on having fuel oil to allow that station to run in case there are challenges with the natural gas supply.
And I guess to supplement Scott, because based on economic dispatch, the natural gas is much lower cost to operate. And so while it has that capability to operate on fuel oil, economically, we would only expect it to operate on fuel oil in extreme conditions to support resiliency, like the conditions of the polar vortex when, every megawatt that we could produce was critical to our system at that point. And there were challenges with natural gas supply. So, again, I think the tank we're talking about, having that capability at that facility to support resiliency, the operation on fuel oil, depending on resiliency conditions in normal operation, it shouldn't operate as long as natural gas is available. So hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity. And if you have additional questions, I think the team can help support that.
Thank you, Mark, and it was nice to hear from a neighbor who's going to be right near the facility. Liz, I think we got you. If you still have a question, we can take you off mute, but I think that we just need to have you unraise your hand. Yeah, there we go.
Heard that.
Thank you. And then I'm not seeing any other hand raises. Oh, here we go. Mr. Lester's back. Kim, if you wouldn't mind. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Was any of the future energy storage assumed to be was it assumed all to be at the transmission level, or was some of it assumed in any of your scenarios to be at the distribution level to alleviate some of the scenarios for high demands on the
Good
circuits?
question. We should do more distributed storage.
So, Mr. Lester, I'll address your question. I think I heard something else. But to address your question, we had limited capability on, just the magnitude or the number of different types of resources that we could model. We modeled battery storage at the utility scale. And so just like solar, we want to understand the potential for adding that on the distribution side and the potential for mitigating distribution system impacts. So that's part of that advanced demand side feasibility study, is understanding, what and where there may be potential to alleviate some of that congestion or some of those concerns. So, or some of those impacts. But we did evaluate on the utility scale, and there still may be opportunity, to get more precise on where those could be on the distribution system to optimize value. So, good question. I'm afraid we're not all the way there yet to the answer. The other thing I would mention, I guess caveating, is it's going to be a trade-off on economies of scale, at the larger facility location, versus smaller, and how those economies of scale relate to the particular cost of the upgrades in question. So again, death by details. It's in the details for when we get to that point.
Thank you, Colton. Thank you again, Mr. Lester, for your question. I think, Mark Leskutov, I think you might just need to unmute, or excuse me, unraise your hand, but next up is Mr. Welsh. Thank you, sir. Kim will unmute you just momentarily. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate today's meeting, as I have all the other meetings. Just sort of a follow-up question. Is OPPD actually lobbying members of Congress so that public power can get the same type of financial incentives as private companies do when they build and own wind, solar, and battery power?
I can take that, Mr. Welsh. This is Javier Fernandez. Yes, well, we have a big voice here in the state, of course, and the voice that we have also is at Capitol Hill through associations. So we are a member of the American Public Power Association. We're a member of the Large Public Power Council and other industry groups. And we are actively working with legislators as these rules are drafted. We want to make sure that we represent our customer owners. And to the extent that we can get some of those benefits, it would only open up more options for us to continue to pass on benefits to our customer owners. So I can assure you we are at the table. And as you can imagine, of course, the dynamics in Washington, D.C. are ever changing by the minute, but we are at the table. We're at many tables as much as we can, really trying to influence those advantages back to our customer owners.
Thank you, Javier. And thank you again, Mr. Welsh. We're getting near the top of the hour. We have a good amount of people still on. I think some folks have dropped off. They got what they needed out of this presentation. The questions have been great. I'm just not seeing any new hand raises at this time. Mr. Welsh, did you have a follow-up? Kim, if you'd be so kind. Thanks.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Javier and I think you already know this, that I'm involved with several organizations that could help lobby our local organizations and could perhaps spread that throughout this country if we knew what bills we should be adding our voices to make yours a little bit stronger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Welsh. And again, I think this is important for me to state again, we value the voice of every single customer. And what I've heard today are very different perspectives from people who have very different opinions. And that's the beauty of having a public power entity really represented by the people that have all of these perspectives. And I really appreciate the offer, and I appreciate the comments that we've heard from all participants. It really is what makes this organization stronger and better, is really to have those challenging points of views that really force us to think really hard to how do we continue to chart the future for our customer owners, which is really the reason why we exist. So I really appreciate not only you, Mr. Welch, your comment right now, but really everyone else who has participated today.
Okay, that looks to be the end of the hand raises. Looks like we might have one more question in the Q&A. We'll have to see if maybe one of our subject matter experts could help with this. Is OPPD working to remove at the state level to up the limits on net metering of 1%? Just one moment. It appears maybe not so at the current time. All right. Any other questions, hand raises? Thanks for the good job, Dr. Moody. Okay.
Well, if we're done, we're almost at the top of the hour. We can wrap it up going to the next steps because, you know, although we're wrapping up this presentation, we hope it's not the last that we hear from you. So please know these are the next steps here. Public comment and review on the IRP closes on February 20th. So if you wanted to take some time following this presentation to really look deeper into that document, you still have plenty of time to do so. February 20th is when we'll close those comments, and they are available on oppdcommunityconnect.com. In addition to comments, you also have an opportunity to ask us questions, and we could work with our subject matter experts to get you those answers. We will file that IRP at the end of the month. We'll continue to expand upon the net zero planning in 2022 by initiating those advanced feasibility studies for supply and demand side opportunities that Colton had talked about. Following this meeting, as we do with every meeting, we really want to hear from you and what you thought of this presentation today. So there's going to be two options for you to get a survey. There'll be a safe pop-up option. As you leave the meeting, you can certainly go ahead and click that link, and it'll go to a SurveyMonkey where we're just asking for some of your feedback on this presentation. We sincerely look at all that feedback, and we use that to make our outreach better each time. If you missed that pop-up, watch your email. We'd love to get your input. And again, as I can't reiterate enough, OPPD Community Connect, leave us your comments by the 20th of February. This virtual presentation recording will be posted as soon as I have it available. We'll get it up there for folks to view. If any of your colleagues, friends, family missed it tonight, they'll be able to review it at a later time. And again, those question and answers along with comments are available on the platform. If you do belong to an organization that you wanted one of us to come and speak to, you can certainly get in touch with us at oppd.com/speakers bureau. We'd love to come visit and talk more. So with that, unless Colton will, anyone has any final remarks?
Yeah, we appreciate everyone joining us today for the IRP. I know that a lot of this content we've shared in a number of workshops before. There's good information available and of course the report, but thank you for joining us today, and it's good to hear your voices and your comments on the process this year. So thank you.